Uh, Today's lecture we are going to start with the basics of photochemistry. We have completed 2 units. Today we are going to start unit third, which is the photochemistry. And this lecture, in this lecture, we will start with the basics of photochemistry, and we'll see different types of photochemical excitations, a singlet and a triplet states, and we'll see their stability and their lifetimes. So we'll start with the introduction of the basic definitions of photochemistry. Photochemistry, as you might be aware, that it's the branch of chemistry which deals with the study of interaction of electromagnetic radiation with matter, leading to a physical change or a photochemical reaction or a chemical change. So it is the branch of chemistry which deals with the interaction of electromagnetic radiations with matter. But this interaction leads to a physical change or to a chemical change. So this definition is similar to the definition of spectroscopy, except in the fact that here we are adding certain things, that this interaction leads to a physical change or it leads to a chemical change. So the light radiation of the visible and ultraviolet regions have wavelengths uh, that those wavelengths are between 200 to 800 nanometer, and as such, you know such radiations actually bring about these chemical changes, which are known as the photochemical changes. So such chemical reactions which are brought about by the visible and ultraviolet radiations are termed as photochemical reactions. So chemical reaction can be, the activation energy for a chemical reaction can be provided in mainly two forms. One is the thermal energy, another is the photochemical energy. By the help of light. So if it is done by a thermal process, then it's known as a thermally induced reaction. If the activation energy is provided in the form of thermal energy, so the reaction will be known as thermally induced. And if it is produced in the form of light, then the reaction will be known as photochemically induced. So precisely speaking, photochemistry is the science of chemical effects of radiation whose wavelengths lie in the visible and ultraviolet regions, means 200 to 800 nanometer region. So what is a photochemical change and what is a photophysical change? A chemical change brought about by light is known as a photochemical change. Means it produces new molecular entities, new molecules are produced. In other words, reactants are converted into products. Means one kind of molecules are converted into another kind of molecule. So such reactions are known as, such a change is known as a photochemical change. Photophysical change, on the other hand, it leads to change in energy and electronic structure without any chemical change. Means no molecular entities are formed, and which means, no bonds are broken and no bonds are formed in the products. No bonds are broken in the reactants and no new bonds are formed in the products. It's known as a photophysical change. So in this photophysical change, only the energy of the molecule changes. The molecule goes from a lower energy state, ground state, to a higher energy state. Now, two terms we will encounter during during the lessons of photochemistry. One is the ground state, and another is the excited state. We'll check them out here. What's the ground state and what's in excited state? You might be aware about these two terms, but we'll deal with them in a different way. In the ground state, the available electrons occupy in pairs the lowest energy orbitals, and the overall energy of the molecule is the lowest possible. So in the ground state, all the electrons, they occur in pairs, and the orbitals which are lowest in energy, only those orbitals are occupied in the ground state, and the energy of the molecule is the lowest possible. On the other hand, in an electronically excited state, one electron occupies a higher energy orbital rather than the lowest energy orbital, which is available to it, and the overall energy of the molecule is higher than that in the ground state. So electronically excited state means a molecule goes from a ground state orbital to an excited state orbital. So the difference between a ground state and excited state is that of energy. The molecule in the ground state is lower energy, and the molecule in the excited state, it has higher energy. The electronic excited state is a distinct species. It's a distinct species in itself with a finite lifetime, and which has physical and chemical properties which are different from those of the ground state. So the physical and chemical properties of the excited state are different than the ground state. So how these properties, physical properties and chemical properties, are different in these two states? When an electron is excited from ground state to the excited state, what happens? This electron goes from a bonding orbital to an antibonding orbital. When an electron goes to an antibonding orbital, the antibonding interactions increase, which result in, when antibonding interactions increase, energy of the molecule increases, the bond length that gets increased, the bond angles, they can change, and many other properties of the molecule, they can also change as a result of this electronic excitation. So an electronically excited state is the starting point for subsequent chemical reactions. So the most of these photochemical reactions, they actually start from an electronically excited state. And during this electronic excitation, this electron is promoted from a relatively high energy occupied orbital to an orbital unoccupied in the ground state, and that's of relatively low energy. See what I mean by this? The electronic excitation starts from, suppose you have an example of this molecule here. There are 3 bonding orbitals and 3 antibonding orbitals. Out of the 3 bonding orbitals, pi 3 orbital is called as the HOMO, highest occupied molecular orbital. The electronic excitation doesn't start from pi 1, or it doesn't start from pi 2, it starts from pi 3, because this orbital is the highest energy orbital, and exciting this electron requires minimum amount of energy. So the electronic excitation starts from HOMO, and this electron goes to an unoccupied orbital in the ground state, but which is of lowest energy, that is the LUMO. So this electronic excitation, it starts from HOMO and it ends in LUMO. So after electronic excitation, this electron is promoted from HOMO to LUMO, but in the excited state, this terminology of HOMO and LUMO, it gets changed. HOMO in the ground state and HOMO in the excited state, they are different. Like here in this case, pi 3 is the HOMO in the ground state, but in excited state, pi 4 is the HOMO. Similarly, in the ground state, pi 4 is the LUMO, but in the excited state, pi 5 is the LUMO. So LUMO means lowest unoccupied molecular orbital, right? It's clear so far. Now we'll deal with different types of electronic excitations. That was about the ground state and the excited state. Different types of electronic excitation. In organic molecules, there are different kinds of bonds. You have pi bond, you have sigma bonds, you have pi bonds, you have sigma electrons, pi electrons are there, non-bonding electrons are there. So depending upon the structure of the molecule, different kinds of electronic excitations are possible. So when an electron in a molecule is excited, it usually goes into the lowest available vacant orbital, which is usually antibonding orbital. And for most of the organic molecules, following transitions occur. First of these transitions is the sigma to sigma star transition. This transition starts from a sigma bonding molecular orbital and it lands in a sigma antibonding molecular orbitals. And clearly, such transitions can occur only in alkanes or cycloalkanes, which have no non-bonding electrons or which have no pi electrons. So such type of reactions are excitations occur in alkanes or cycloalkanes, and these excitations, these transitions, sigma to sigma star, the energy gap between these two orbitals is the maximum out of these electronic excitations, and as a result these excitations are the high energy excitations and they require electromagnetic radiations of highest energy among these four electronic excitations. So they are the high energy electronic excitations. Second type of electronic excitation is the N to sigma star. So this electronic excitation starts from a non-bonding orbital and it lands in a sigma antibonding orbital, and such transitions naturally can occur in those compounds which contain non-bonding electrons. Non-bonding electrons means alcohols, amines, ethers, etc. means compounds which contain sigma bonds, and compounds which contain non-bonding electrons, lone pair of electrons. And the energy required for the N to sigma star transition is lower than that of the sigma to sigma star transition. Third interesting kind of electronic excitation is the pi to pi star transition. These are very important transitions for photochemistry, and these transitions can occur in alkenes, aldehydes, carboxylic acids, and many molecules which possess pi electrons. And the energy required for pi to pi star transitions is lower than that of N to sigma star, because the energy gap between pi to pi star is lower than N to sigma star. Fourth kind of electronic excitation is the N to pi star transition, and such transitions, they occur in aldehydes, ketones, carboxylic acids, in general in those molecules which contain both pi electrons and non-bonding electrons. And these transitions, N to pi star transitions, they require the lowest energy for transitions, because the energy gap between the N and pi star orbitals is the lowest among these four electronic transitions, so they occur at higher wavelengths. This is a diagrammatic sketch of different electronic transitions. You can clearly see that these are the sigma bonding electrons, pi bonding electrons. These are n non-bonding electrons. Then we have pi antibonding orbitals. Sorry, these are sigma bonding orbitals, pi bonding orbitals. These are non-bonding orbitals. Then we have antibonding orbitals, pi antibonding and sigma antibonding orbitals. And the arrows indicate that different arrows indicate the energy gap between the bonding orbital and the antibonding orbital. And you can clearly see that this sigma to sigma star transition, the energy gap between these two, I'm talking about this transition. The energy gap between the sigma bonding and sigma antibonding orbital is the greatest, and that's why they are the highest. They require the highest energy for this electron to go from sigma bonding to sigma antibonding. On the other hand, this transition here, which is N to pi star transition, I'm talking about this transition, the energy gap is the lowest among these transitions, so these transitions occur in the longer wavelength region. So here in this sigma to sigma star transition, they occur at lower wavelengths, they occur in this region. Then you have N to sigma star here, then you have pi to pi star in unsaturated alkenes and dienes, then you have pi to pi star in aromatics, and here you have N to pi star transitions in carbonyls, which occur at the longest wavelengths among these transitions. So this slide gives you a relative energy of these transitions. Highest energy transitions are the sigma to sigma star, lowest energy transitions are the n to pi star, and pi to pi star, n to sigma star, and sigma to pi star transitions are the lowest, are the intermediate energy transitions. And out of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 transitions, these sigma to pi star, sigma to pi star, and pi to sigma star transitions, they have low transition probability. The probability of these transitions is very low, means these transitions have either low or they have zero intensity. So as a result, these transitions, they are not so important in organic photochemistry. And out of these transitions, two particular transitions, which is pi to pi star and n to pi star, means these two transitions, pi to pi star and n to pi star transitions, they are of most importance to organic photochemistry, because most of the transitions involve these pi to pi star and n to pi star transitions, and these transitions occur within the practical range of UV spectrophotometers, where these reactions are carried out. They occur in the practical region of visible and ultraviolet radiations, practical wavelength region of this electromagnetic spectrum. So those compounds which contain carbonyl, they can be excited in both ways, and they usually give rise to two peaks in the UV spectrum. So this is all about the types of electronic excitations in organic molecules.